Hey people, this is strictly educational magic, and this is going to be the first one. This will be the best place to start. If you want to learn about the ancient language, ancient history, this is going to be the best place in the world to learn how to read the ancient Hebrew and the ancient Greek. I've been doing this several years now. And I never tried to mislead anybody, but I know that I've learned things since I began. And so I'm going to go back and make a beginning and show where I started and how I got here. I was born in 1966 in Connecticut under the star of Thoth. And I never cared anything about astrology, astronomy. But if you're going to learn this, you're going to have to understand some astrology, because that's what was the idea. They were trying to write everything down in a form where somebody could read it in the future and understand the time that it was written. So my mom was an immigrant from Quebec, and French was her first language. And I didn't stay in Connecticut long. I moved down to South Mississippi, and I grew up here all my life. My mom and dad, both their family was all Catholic. And I went to the Catholic church when I was young, and they couldn't answer any of my questions. It didn't make any sense. Down here, my neighbor was German. He was farmer and mechanic, and I learned a lot about farming and mechanic. And at my neighbor's, I grew up. His son was my age, and we played together. And my dad had a steel fabrication shop, and so I grew up doing commercial construction with my dad. Steel and concrete. I joined the Navy in 1984, and I spent 4 years around Europe. My favorite hobby was drinking all the local beer and talking to the local girls, and I learned a lot about the language there. You know, that it was pretty easy to pick up on. All the French and the Spanish and the Italian was all fairly similar. I did 4 years, and I got out and I joined the Merchant Marines. I worked on a dive boat in the Gulf, and then I got on a heavy lift ship, the world's largest heavy lift ship, and traveled around the world some more. I came back and I worked a little bit for some contractors, and then I started my own business. I've been self-employed ever since, and I do everything. I do tree surgery and all forms of construction from the ground up. And I mainly design and build pool cages, screen pool enclosures. And I slowed down. I don't work as much anymore, and I spend most of my time reading. And I was real interested in how the pyramids was built, all the ancient stone structures. Because like I say, I've been doing heavy construction all my life, and it's just not the way to go. It's very difficult. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's not the easy way to do it. So there had to be a reason behind it. You know, there had to be the energy that come out of the buildings, you know, had to be greater than what was put into it. So I've been studying ancient writings for a good while, 8-10 years. And while studying, I seen a video on YouTube with 2 young rabbis in it years ago. And they said that they can't read Hebrew. They said they memorized the Bible. You know, they have all their years of schooling. All the Jewish school kids learn the Torah. They memorize the Torah by the time they get out the 12th grade. And then the rabbis spend the rest of their time, another 14 years, memorizing the rest of the Old Testament. And so I grew up, you know, going to the Catholic Church when I was young, and then later I went to all the Baptists and Methodists. I went to all the churches. I went to the Christian Bible schools every summer, and it always felt like a waste of time. Nothing made sense there. The story didn't make sense at all. And maybe about 8 years ago, I was talking to a lawyer friend of mine about some things I had been learning while studying the ancient language, and she told me I should read the Bible. And so I went back and tried to read it one more time, and by the time I got to Genesis 11, when it says that, you know, one language was such a problem for God, he had to come down and change it, that I pretty much figured out that the Bible, you know, people didn't have phones and TVs. Why was one language such a problem? It's because we already had the Bible. The Bible's older than the language change. I knew they were trying to cover up what was in the Bible. And so I went and found the oldest Torah that I could find, and I just started studying it in the ancient letter meanings, trying to figure these words out. And I've been doing it, I don't know, 5-6 years now, as long as I've been making these movies. And this is going to be the easiest Hebrew, Greek, ancient, Coptic lesson that you're going to find. I'm going to make this easier than anybody on the web. When I started, I started to watch a couple of them Hebrew teachers, because it was a mountain, and they said, you know, all these letters have a meaning, but that doesn't matter anyway. And they just regurgitated the information that they were given, and they couldn't tell why. So I'm going to start here with the basic language shapes and the meanings. And this might take a couple videos. I'm going to show you everything I learned about all the marks in these years of reading. And so in the rest of my movies, it'll speed them up. I won't have to slow down and explain why the reading directions and why I read the way I do. I went to the library, and my friend hooked me up with this download of this Torah. This is just the first 5 books. And I found it a lot easier to start reading with these, because they look a lot like our alphabet, just backwards. It was a lot easier to memorize the letters this way, because all these Hebrew block style, you know, you have several letters that are so similar that I used to confuse them a lot. The E and the H and the T, you know, if I didn't blow it up big enough, they were easily confused. And the Vav and the Z is sometimes hard to tell the difference. And the N, the final N. I had got on the internet and I studied all the letter charts. There's many of them where people have been doing this for years, been trying to match up the different languages. And so people confuse, you know, the language with the letters, but you know, I can take this set of letters and I can write any language with any set of letters here. And so I started with these old picture letters, and it's easier to memorize the meaning with these old pictures, and then kind of move them into this old Proto and this old Phoenician, and then I could remember. And it was just the letters had been changed, and this is the real meaning of this Coptic, you know, C-O, co, and the co picture. And so this here, what they call Coptic, you know, it looks like our little letter A and a B, and that's what it is. It just means to put this picture meaning into a letter. So the picture meanings have very much to do with it. And I studied all the charts. They're not all the same, they're different. And I'm not going to say that any of them are actually correct. And I can see mistakes in here that I know of. You know, the Vav didn't turn into the F. The F come from the Q. And I don't use all of their terms. I call that letter A the A, and the B, and the G. I use the term on this Vav because the Vav and the Yod, you know, are different. Because the Vav, you can see how it moved over here, and it became all 3 letters. Well, in the Greek, you know, they made it the Y too, but it's the U, V, and the W are the Vav. And the Yod here, you know, it became the I, the J, and the Y. And the Greeks turned the Vav into the Y, but they still use the Yod. So I'm going to go over this again with that other letter chart, but I'm going to hit this quick. You know, the first letter is A, you know, and it's the first, the power, the bull, and it turned into our letter A. And then the B is a floor plan of a house. It means the house and in. And it's like, you know, this is the door and you come in your house, and this is your secluded area over here. And then the G, they say it represents the foot. And you can see it's the A, B, G, where we would put a C. And I believe a double of the G is the C. And you'll see it here where they turn the G into the C and the G. When they kick the Z back to the N, you know, the seventh day was God's day, and they didn't want the Satan letter of Z, you know, the knife in the seventh place. So they moved it to the end as a story. But the G is the foot, and it's to lift or to carry, it's transportation. It's where our word car come from. So the G, pretty sure it doubles as the C. So one of the double letters. And then the Dalet, you know, was the door. I'm not sure about this picture, but you know, this is kind of like a cloth door hanging down. And it confuses with the R. It looks very similar to the R and the final P. And there's a reason for that. And then the E here, you know, you can see the letter E up here turned up. And it's a picture of a man standing up, and it means a life, and it's V. And then the Vav, you know, this is a Vav pin. It's a Carter key that holds your wagon wheel on. It means connected, Vav. And then this old letter Z, sometimes it looked like a knife. Sometimes it looked like RZ with a line across it, like a 7. And it's the 7th letter, and that's where that all come from. But this looks more like the old Egyptian plow symbol that I tell you is the share, you know, and a share to shear the earth, and a crop share. That's where all that come from. And then the letter H, you can see this. This looks like the Egyptian H, the Chet they'll call it, and it's a wall, and it means to divide. It looks real similar to the E, and they'll change up, you know, the H in the Greek, they'll use it as the E. And then the Tet, you know, this turned into the Greek theta, and it's the TH. And so this TH is also TE, the same as the Shin. It's the SH, is also the SE. And it's the basket to collect, the serpent. And then the Yod, it's the working hand. It's the smallest letter, the I, the iota. And then the Ka, the K, is the giving hand. And that's that Egyptian letter Ka, where you see the two hands holding up. And then the letter L, they say it represents a staff. But it does, it's the tongue is what it represents. And you'll see this shape on a lot of old coins behind the leader. You see it on the top of the Egyptian crown, and that's what it means. The L, the mouth, the tongue, the word is the ruler. You know, it's the L in the word leader is where that comes from. And then this M and N, they'll confuse it up in a lot of the languages, but it meant the waters, and the waters meant motion. But that's more the letter N that they've turned to seed. But it means the cycles. And you see this final M, you know, it looks more like this S. And we look at that a little bit in the other one, we see it better. The N is this cycle, you know, and it's more, in Egypt it was drawn as this M. And it meant the cycle of the water, not necessarily the water, but the cycles, the tides. This is another S. And it was the S for secret or support, and this is wrong. This is the letter X. This is the ancient letter X in many of the languages. And then the O comes from an eyeball. It means to see. And it's our letter O. And then this is the P, one of the P's. And this comes from the old Egyptian mouth for a P. And it meant open or the mouth. But it means the face. And it looked like this or with a final. And then this is the letter X, and they say that this represents a man laying down, digging a hole to plant. And so it used to be drawn as the plant. Most all the languages drew it like this and here, and it means to plant, you know, and it's the letter X. When you bury treasure, you know, on the map, you put that X, that's where you planted it. It means the plant that's growing, plant that you're eating. And this was the most important letter. You know, everything was about the plant. When people first started writing, you know, plants and animals was the most important things. You use plants for food, you use them for tools, for spears, for shelter, for clothes. And they try to change the meaning of this mostly. And it's the same X that's on your RX. So the head is the R, and the X, the head plants, is drugs. This Q looked more like this in most every language. It was a worldwide letter, and it meant the fifth direction. You know, you have to know where you're at. This is the center. You have to know where you're at before you know where you're going. And in the old Egyptian writing, it looked like this, and they'll call it the slope, and it's not. It means the center. And so when you're building, you know, when you build with brick, you put the good looking side down and out where you're going to see. This is the middle of the wall. When you build old brick buildings, you know, it's 2-layer bricks, and you put the pretty side of the brick on the outside on both sides, and this will be the middle. It means the center, to come after. And they'll also call it a back of a head or a monkey. And so I don't know if they're saying that we came after the monkey or we're going to turn into monkeys. And then the R, you know, is the head, and it's first, and not necessarily first in line, but the first in line in charge. The one who's in charge is the head. And then this is the shin, and this is the S used mostly, and it'll have markings to tell whether it's just the S or the SH or SE. With the marking could be either way, SH or SE. And that's the same reason why the Greeks will mix up the H and the E for the same letter. And then this is the T in the oldest writing. It would look like our T, and then it got flipped over like the X. And then this kind of looks like a little T but turned on its side. And it means the mark, the writings. And this is one of the most important letters. If you're writing, you know, this is what it means. It means, you know, leave your mark. And if you can't write, that's the only letter you knew was this T. So you didn't sign your X, you signed your mark, your X, your T. And so the language has a story in there. And it's a big doozy. A big doozy. Tickle, mends, so pits. And then the last 4 letters spell FRST first. And so the ancient writers, you know, they wrote in both directions. And they would flip directions of the letters for the direction they were writing. And the same in Egypt. And it had meanings in the flipping of directions, and that's going to come later. But this is the same place that our alphabet comes from. So I pulled this off a Christian page, and this is the one I carried with me after I started recognizing letters, and I started to break down everything I saw every day into these letter meanings to see what words mean. So I copied this from a Christian page. I don't usually look over here into the spiritual side. I look for the meanings here to understand the letters more, give some more meaning. And the first thing I'll tell you is, you know, the Aleph is silent. But the first 2 people in the Bible are Adam and Allah. You know, so how could the A be silent? None of their story makes sense. But it, you know, A is first, is knowledge comes first. The knowledge, to teach, to learn. Then the B is the house, and it means in. When you see it on the beginning of a word, you don't pronounce it B. You just say in, and then read the rest of the word behind it. Same with the E. You don't pronounce the ha in front of all. When I hear people speaking that language with all the ba and the ha in front of words, I know they don't understand the language. They might understand the new modern Hebrew created to keep this hidden, but they don't understand the ancient language. And so I'm not sure about this build or make. It means house or inn. The build or make is the yod. But yeah, the family, you know, is in the family, the house. Your family is your house. And you'll see it on the beginning of all the words they say is son and daughter, all begin with B. The G, the camel, the foot, to lift, to carry. The D is the door, you know, it means a way, you know, where you're going to go through. It's the only way to pass through the wall. You have to go through the door. It's the way, path, pathway, opening. The E, I don't know about the window, but it means life and, yeah, breath. And this is all, the guy who did this, he looked like he used his cursor to try to draw the old letters, so that's what this all is. And so when you see, you know, the E on the beginning of a word, you don't pronounce the ha. You just say the and then read the rest of the words separate. Same as the B, you say in and then pronounce the rest of the word. Same as the vav, it means connected. And so not necessarily always and, but it means to join together. And when something's joined, it's two. And so I'll pronounce it as two a lot, often. But it's also pronounced as a W, a V, or a U at the beginning of a word. Not necessarily and. And then the Z, you know, was the plow, the share. It's a weapon, it's a knife, and it means to cut, or a tool. And the H was a wall, and it means divide, separated. And the tet, this is the serpent. It means to wrap around, to collect something, to surround, to gather. And the yod is the I, J or Y, the hand, the working hand, to work, to make. Kaf is the giving hand, and you'll see it when it's on the beginning of a word, same as the B and the E and the Vav. They'll say it's like or as, and it means given, you know, given as. It means to give or to fold. You know, fold is, you know, your children are your fold. What comes out of the work is what the give is. And the L, they'll call it the shepherd's staff, but it comes from the tongue. And when you see it on the front of the word, it's to or of. You know, your of, L is of your father, and M from out of your mother. So the L is the father letter, and the M is the mother letter. M is where you're from, and your name comes of the father. The authority, the tongue. It's the letter where your word language come from, the spoken language. The M, the water from out of, motion, liquid. And the N is a cycle, which is fish. You know, the way a fish swims. He swims like a wave. And they call it perpetuate or continuous. It means a constant cycle. And then the Samic. This is one of the S's. And it was the S for support or secret. You know, a prop that held up the center of your tent. It was that pole in the center of the tent that held the high point. It means secret or support. And then the I, and they'll say it's silent too, but it's not. You know, the A can be read as an A or an O, and the O can be read as an O or an A. And it's the I, it means to see. And then the Pei is the mouth, but mostly it means the face and open. And so it was a builder's mark. It was when the builder seen a stone that was pretty, and it was going to be on the outside of the building, it was going to have writing on it, you know, it'd be marked with the Pei. And it means this is the face, don't damage this side. This side's going to be revealing, it's going to show. And then the Tzadi, this is the X, and it's often the TS, the TZ, or the X. Read as Zion is spelt with the Tzadi. In the Greek, they'll have two X's. They'll have the Tzadi, and the other X, they'll give it the CH, And this is also read as a CH sometime. I don't know if it was at that time, but our words evolve into it now. And it means plant. And it's something that I added in here because they totally tried to hide the meaning of the word. It was a picture of a plant. It shouldn't say side of man here. It should say plant here. And it's also a cross. You know, when you cross over something, you X'd over it. And the cough, the back of the head, to come after, to follow. The ape, they'll say. And like I say, it's the center or the fifth direction. It was worldwide. That's the Q that you'll see in the Hebrew spelling of China. In fact, in the Chinese spelling of China, you'll see a letter real similar to this. It just looks squarer than round. Resh, R, the head, begin to go first. And this holy, they've twisted the meaning of holy. The head, the chief. The shin was the fire, the teeth, means to consume. Fire consumes and teeth consumes. That's its main meaning, to consume. Fire and teeth. Then the T is the mark, the writings, the seal, the sign, something that shows the meaning, the writings. You know, it's what we're doing, we're reading. It's the writings. It was the letter of Thoth, the teacher of writings. And then you have these 5 final letters, soffit letters. If you look at them, this is the K, and they just drop the tail down where it used to be this way. Here, the cough, and they just drop the tail down for the final letter. And I believe when it's final, it has a mark in it, and sometimes it's read as a T when it's final. When the final letters, they're read as their letter. Ancient writers wrote words in both directions. You know, you're carving stone, you want to get the most out of your letters. And so they wrote in both directions, and so letters had different shapes for different meanings. So you could write cat just with a A and a final K, and a marking telling you to read that word backwards first, and you'd read it K, A, and then when it was final, it may be T, depending on the markings. The final S, or final M, it doesn't look anything like the M. It looks a lot more like the S. In Hebrew, they'll say everything with a final M is plural, and it's because it's not pronounced as an M, it's pronounced as an S. It's like our S being plural on the end. And so the same way, when they use this for that same reason they use this shin, you know, because they want you to read it as SH in either direction you're reading it. And so if you put a SH, then you came back the other way, you're reading it HS. But if you use this letter SH in either direction you're reading, it's a SH. And so that's the idea of these final letters. And so that the final M is always a S when it's on the end. But there's other markings that tell whether it's the end of the word or not, and we'll get to that later. Then the final N, and I believe this is a final M, is pronounced as an M when it's on the end, because you don't have a final M. Anytime this is on the end of a word, it's pronounced as an S. So if you wanted to finish a word with an M sound, you would use the final N, which it still meant the cycle, the seed, but it was pronounced as an M. And then the final P, you know, all these final letters, the X, the P, the N, and the K, they just drop the tail down. But the final M, they turned into the S with a dropped tail, where the S is more rounded. They just squared it off. And so I'm not real sure yet. I've been studying it, and I think this final P is a R when it's on the end. It hasn't come to me yet. There's nowhere to learn this from. I just learned it from studying the language. And so these are just things that I've figured out from the years of reading. And so I know that there's a purpose for changing the final X, and I haven't quite figured it out yet. but it's possibly to changing the CH or the TZ or the S. But it looks, you know, the top of it looks a lot like this Hebrew O, and so it's possibly has something to do with that, and I'm not sure yet. I'll let you know when I figure it out. And so they say that they were created for numbering, to give numbers, and it's possible, and for sure is in the new Hebrew writings. But this old language come from alchemists. That's who was writing, and it was all for alchemists to keep their secrets, and they could write something and you think you know what you're reading, and they actually have another secret inside there that you're not catching. So now in the double letters, like I say, I believe the A doubles for a O, and the B is definitely, everybody knows that the B and the V, you know, we pronounce a lot of words with the B, and the Spanish use the same word, but they'll pronounce the B as a V. The G doubling for a C. The D doubles for the tet. I believe the same as the tet doubles for the D. And that's why in the German, where we say them, they'll say dem. A lot of German words that we pronounce TH, they're pronounced with the D. You know, this and dis. The E and the H interchange. And the Vav being a W, a V, or a U. And I believe as the language evolved, that it gets mixed up with the B, because, you know, the B is doubling with the V. And so I believe that's more in the Greek that you run into that. This chet here is the H, but sometimes it's the CH. Sometimes as the H is pronounced as the E. Tet doubling is the D, I, J, or Y. And the Kaf has a double, and they say it changes to a CH, but I think it changes to a CE. Iron doubling for the A. The P, it doubles for a F, same as the Q can be a K or a F. Tazadi, TS, TZ, CH, or X. And it sounds real difficult. It comes together better after a while of reading. And I believe they say the R is a double letter, and they totally forgot. They have no idea what that R is. And several of these letters that I'm telling you are doubles are things that I've figured out while reading, that they knew they were doubles, but they don't. They've lost the meanings. The Shin, you know, is sometimes it's just the S, sometimes the SH or the SE, and it'll have a mark up here letting you know that this is just a S, and when this dot's over here, it's a SH or a SE. The T is the T, and they'll say that it doubles for a TH, and the same is the tet doubles for a T, but I believe they're wrong there. The tet doubles for the D, and it's possible the T doubles for the TH. So my program's loading up. It's getting really slow and hard to operate, but I want to put some of this together for you. And the reason this all comes together like this is, you know, a Vav is to connect, and an N is a cycle. And so when they're together, it's the W, when. And so to connect the cycle of Friday is when Friday. Hey, come Friday, we're going to pitch a bitch. When. And two of the most used words in the Hebrew and the Greek are what and what to. And it's Vav, is connect, it's seal. And so the connected seal is the written name of something, what. And the two is this T-A, and it's the sealed knowledge. A is knowledge. And so the sealed knowledge is the picture meaning is a two. So what two, you know, is just a Vav, a T, and a A, you know, what two. and there'll be a dot in the T that, there's two T's. So you pronounce it W-T-T-O. And some of the most used words in the Hebrew, and they won't give them a meaning. But yeah, a what is the writings, and a tu is the picture of it. Its actual being. And you see it both in the Hebrew and the Greek. It's some of the most used words. And so along with which, that's the first words you learn. What, which, to. And which is to W, connect, and the divide, to connect the divide. And so what, which, to is the first game you play with your kid, when they're just 3 years old, they're learning to read. And you have your to is the TA, the seal knowledge. And you have your what, the connected writings, the connected marks that have a meaning. And the which, to connect the divided. Which one goes where? Which is what to. Which is the what the ship goes to. It goes to this one. Connect the divide. Which. And so which is, when you're having a selection. And so all the language, the words define themselves with the letter meanings. And that's how I was able to put this language back together. And so I thought I'd get a lot more in here. And so in the next movie, I'll show how the Greek letters match up with this. And I'll show some of the markings that are used both in the Hebrew and in the Greek that mean the same things, both in the Hebrew and the Greek. These markings here. A bunch of different markings here. They'll call them vowel points, and they'll tell you they don't know what a lot of these markings mean. And you'll see them doubled up on the top and the bottom. And you'll see some of these markings in the Greek and in the Hebrew. And in musical, you'll find these same markings. And I kind of figured out what they meant before I went and looked in the music. And sure enough, they have the same meaning in music. And so I'll get into the Greek and I'll get into these markings in the next movie. And I'll make the cover look like this, and I'll just put a big number 2 on it.
Don't forget, I won't forget.
Alright, I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.